For months now, we have been debating who should win the Hart Trophy. Who's the most valuable player in the NHL? Well, the players were asked who they would take if they absolutely had to win just one game, and their answer, not surprisingly, Connor McDavid came out on top with just over 48% of the vote. But this may surprise you. At number 2, not Nathan MacKinnon or Nikita Kucherov. They finished 3rd and 4th. Austin Matthews didn't even make the top 5. Sidney Crosby got the 2nd most votes for the player NHLers would most want on their team if they had to win just one game. Okay, so what about the top goalie, according to the players? Their pick, if they absolutely had to win one game, Andrei Vasilevskiy. And it's not even close. That despite the fact Vasilevskiy has struggled mightily this season. He's not even in the top 30 in save percentage. Clearly, no love from his peers for Connor Hellebuyck. Despite being the favorite for this year's Vezina, he was only 4th behind Vasilevskiy, Igor Shesterkin, and Ilya Sorokin. The top D-man for one game, Cale Makar, in overwhelming fashion. He took over 56% of the votes, 45% better than Victor Hedman, who came in 2nd. Norris Trophy favorite Quinn Hughes, he was 4th, with only about 4% of the players' votes. The best playmakers in the game, Nikita Kucherov, who's ripping up the league with a career year in points, came in at number 1. Followed closely by Connor McDavid, and his line mate Leon Draisaitl rounds out the top 3. Now, here's an interesting category. The players were asked to vote for the player they hate playing against the most, but would most like to have on their team. Public enemy number 1, the player guys love to hate, Brad Marchand, was the overwhelming choice with over 29% of the vote. And Connor McDavid actually finished 2nd, just behind Marchand. The players are loving what they're seeing from the PWHL. They were asked which player they enjoyed watching the most in this new league, and Marie-Philippe Poulin came in at number 1, with dreaded rival Hilary Knight in at number 2. One final category. Who was the player's pick for the most complete player in the game today? Sidney Crosby, with over 38% of the votes, followed by Alexander Barkov, Anze Kopitar, and then Connor McDavid rounding out the top 4. Crosby, 36 years old, coming off another 40-goal season. Nowhere near the supporting cast he's had in the past, but still hugely respected, admired, and feared by his opponents and peers. Still the most complete player in the game today. The players have spoken. Who better to talk to about the NHLPA player poll than a former member of the PA, Frankie Corrado? Frankie, players still see Sid as the most complete player in the league today. He didn't just win, he blew away the competition with over 38% of the vote. You played with Sid for a while. Craig Button says Crosby should be in the MVP conversation this year still. Do you agree with him?
There's a very compelling case, but ultimately, Gino, it's not going to be enough to keep up with what MacKinnon has done this year, what Kucherov has done, and even the likes of McDavid and Matthews. Now, when it comes to Sidney Crosby and being the most complete player in the NHL, I absolutely agree with the players, and I would be more inclined to vote for Sidney Crosby as my number 1 choice when it comes to the most complete player. And Alex Barkov has a very compelling case as well because of how many minutes he plays shorthanded and all the defensive responsibility and how he excels at that. Now, Crosby is just as good, and there's a little more upside offensively with Crosby. And what he's had to do as far as carrying the mail on this Pittsburgh Penguins team this year has been so impressive. Without a lot of help around him, he's been able to drive this team right into the playoff race when it seemed like they were dead in the water. So I have a lot of respect for the way that Crosby plays the game and how he has made himself one of the most, if not the most complete players. And the players around the league really notice that. And when you go head-to-head against a guy like that, you notice it after a 60-minute game where you're like, man, this guy was all over me tonight. Defensively, offensively, it felt like he had the puck all night. Like, those are the things that these players would really be focusing on, and I'm not surprised that Sidney Crosby got the first-place vote.
Hard to play against Crosby, but the guy NHLers hate playing against the most? No surprise, Brad Marchand. He's the guy that guys say they would absolutely hate facing in the playoffs. Frankie, what makes a guy like this so unbelievably hard to play against?
He likes when the game turns into a little bit of a circus. And there's some players, a lot of players, myself included when I played, I just wanted to play hockey. I wanted to go out there. I wanted to play my shifts. I wanted to touch the puck. Hopefully I had a good night at the end of the game, and I left the rink feeling pretty good about myself. Marchand needs to drive himself into every battle and assert himself and throw a punch and throw a hit and chirp at the bench. He plays much better when he's doing this because he likes it. He really enjoys it, and it's not for everyone, and it's hard to do it every single night. This is an 82-game season where there's a lot of ups and downs, and you can go to the rink on a Tuesday night, and it's gloomy outside, and you think, I just don't have it tonight. He doesn't let that be the case for him. He takes a lot of pride in playing that kind of style of game. It can be stressful for some players. It's not stressful for him. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So, like, when you get a player that really relishes being that person that's hard to play against, that's, you know, hard-nosed, chirping, gritty in your face, it's very noticeable, and that's been the case for Brad Marchand for a long time.
Brad Marchand, the guy the players love to hate. By the way, Frankie, the destination that most players would most like to see host international games in the future, Italy finished in top spot. You know who wasn't the least bit surprised by that? Frankie and me.